The sky above Velrin Prime filled with Dravok warships. There were hundreds of them, blocking out the sun and casting shadows across the land. The ground shook as their troop transports began descending, each one carrying 1,000 soldiers ready to end this war. Commander Zorath stood in the command center, watching the invasion begin. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. This was it, the final battle. Everything they had fought for came down to this day. Captain Cole stood beside him, studying the enemy movements with calm eyes. "They're overconfident," he said quietly. "Good. Overconfident enemies make mistakes." "They outnumber us 5-1, Zorath replied. "Perhaps their confidence is justified." "Numbers don't win wars, Commander. Will does." Cole turned to his communications officer. "All ships, execute Doctrine 17. Let's wake these lizards up." The human fleet, small compared to the Dravok Armada, suddenly broke formation. Their ships scattered in every direction, diving toward the enemy like insects attacking a giant. It looked like suicide. It looked like madness, but it was neither. The human ships were faster than anything the Dravok had ever faced. They weaved between enemy fire, drawing attention and pulling warships out of position, while the Dravok focused on the annoying smaller vessels. Coalition capital ships moved into attack formation. The first Dravok battleship exploded in a ball of fire. Then another, and another. The Armada's tight formation became chaos as commanders tried to respond to threats coming from every direction. "That's impossible," the Dravok fleet commander growled aboard his flagship. "No species is that agile." His tactical officer looked at his screen with terror in his eyes. "Sir, these readings are unlike anything in our database. It is almost as if they know exactly where we are going to fire before we fire." On the ground, the battle was even more intense. 60,000 Dravok soldiers poured from their transports, marching toward the capital city in perfect formation. They expected the coalition to form defensive lines and wait for death. They expected fear and desperation. What they got was Sergeant Amy Parker and 200 human soldiers charging directly at them. "Contact front," Parker shouted. "Hit them hard and don't stop moving." The humans crashed into the Dravok lines like a wave breaking against rocks, but these rocks crumbled. The first row of Dravok fell before they understood what was happening. The second row tried to raise weapons and died with them still in their hands. Human tactics made no sense to the Dravok. They did not hold still. They did not wait for orders. Each soldier moved independently, finding targets and eliminating them with brutal efficiency. When their ammunition ran low, they used knives. When their knives broke, they used fists. Private Nick Torres, his shoulders still bandaged from the previous battle, fought at the front of the assault. He had strapped a speaker to his armor, and strange human music blasted across the battlefield. It was loud and aggressive, full of screaming voices and pounding rhythms. "What is that noise?" A Dravok sergeant demanded. It was the last thing he ever said. Torres shot him twice in the chest and kept moving. Commander Zorath led the coalition forces behind the human vanguard. He had never seen anything like this. The Dravok were terrified. Their formations crumbled. Their soldiers fled or froze. They could not comprehend an enemy that ran toward death with smiles on their faces. Lieutenant Kira fought beside Zorath, a rifle firing again and again. A Dravok soldier appeared from behind a ruined wall, aiming directly at her head. She did not see him. She did not have time to react, but a human did. A young soldier named Leo Marsh threw himself between Kira and the Dravok. The plasma bolt hit him in the back. He fell, and Kira spun around to kill the enemy soldier. When she turned back, Leo was lying face down in the dirt. "Medic!" she screamed. Corporal Reyes appeared within seconds. He rolled Leo over and examined the wound. It was bad. Very bad. The plasma had burned through armor and flesh. "How is he?" Kira asked, tears in her eyes. Leo coughed and actually laughed. I'm fine. Just a scratch. You were shot in the back. Yeah, happens sometimes. Did we win yet? Reyes injected him with something from a small tube. Stay down, Leo. You've done enough. Leo shook his head. Not until it's over. He tried to stand. His legs gave out, but he grabbed his rifle and began crawling toward the battle. Not until it's over. The Dravok ground commander watched from his mobile headquarters as his army fell apart. He grabbed his communications device and broadcast on all channels. Coalition forces. This is Commander Vrath of the Dravok Dominion. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. The response came immediately, but not from the Coalition. It was Captain Cole's voice, calm and almost amused. Commander Vrath, this is Captain Danny Cole of the Earth Defense Fleet. I have a counteroffer. There will be no negotiation. Sure there will. Here's my offer. Run. Take your ships and leave this system. Never come back. If you do, we'll hunt you across the galaxy until there are no Dravok left. Vrath snarled. You are bluffing. You cannot defeat our numbers. Look around you, Commander. Your army is breaking. Your soldiers are running. We're not even trying hard yet. Cole's voice grew cold. You have one chance. Take it. From orbit. The Dravok fleet commander watched the ground battle through his sensors. What he saw made no sense. His soldiers, the finest warriors in the Dominion, were being slaughtered by a handful of small pink creatures. Pull back, he ordered suddenly. All ships, withdraw from the system. His officers stared at him in shock. Sir, we cannot abandon our ground forces. Our ground forces are already dead. They just don't know it yet. We need to report to the Dominion Council. They need to know about these humans. The flagship turned and fled. The rest of the Dravok fleet followed, leaving 60,000 soldiers to face the consequences of their invasion. On the ground, Commander Vrath watched his support vanish into the stars. He looked at the advancing human soldiers, still coming, still fighting, still laughing. And for the first time in his long military career, he felt true fear. He dropped his weapon and raised his hands. I surrender. Parker walked up to him, her armor covered in blood and dirt. Smart choice. She turned to her soldiers. War's over, people. Let's finish cleaning up. The Battle of Velrun Prime was won. The myths had stormed the front line and proven that legends were real. And the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days had passed since the impossible transmission. 3 days of waiting, hoping, and doubting. Commander Zorath had ordered the message kept secret at first. He did not want to give his people false hope. But rumors spread quickly, and soon everyone on Velrun Prime was talking about the humans. Sensor contact, an officer announced from across the command center. Multiple vessels approaching from the quarantine sector. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to the large display screen as it flickered to life. At first, there was nothing but empty space. Then, one by one, ships began to appear. They were smaller than Coalition vessels. Their hulls were dark gray and covered in strange markings. They moved in perfect formation, like a flock of birds changing direction all at once. There were 30 of them. No, 40. The count kept rising. Impossible, someone whispered. They came from the Forbidden Zone. High Counselor Mirith stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. Not impossible. Exactly as the legends promised. Zorath gripped the railing in front of him. His heart was pounding, but he kept his face calm. Open a channel to the lead vessel. The communications officer nodded and worked the controls. After a moment, the screen changed. A face appeared, and for the first time in 300 years, a human looked upon the Coalition. He was strange. His skin was a light brown color, smooth and without scales or ridges. His eyes were dark and warm, with small lines around them that suggested he smiled often. His hair was short and black, and he wore a simple gray uniform. "This is Captain Danny Cole of the strike carrier Relentless," the human said. "I believe you folks called for help." Zorath found his voice. "Captain Cole, I am Commander Zorath of the Volrani Defense Force. We are honored by your response, but I must ask, why have you come?" Cole tilted his head slightly. "You sent a distress signal. Someone was in trouble. Where I come from, that means you show up. But your people have been isolated for 3 centuries. Why break your silence now?" The human captain was quiet for a moment. His expression grew serious, and some of that warmth faded from his eyes. "We isolated ourselves because we believed we were too dangerous to exist among other species. We fought terrible wars against each other. We did things we're not proud of. So we stepped back and watched from the shadows. And now? Now we've watched long enough. The Dravok are burning their way across the galaxy, and good people are dying. We might be monsters, Commander, but we're not the kind of monsters who stand by and do nothing." Mirith leaned close to Zorath. "Let them come," she whispered. "We have nothing to lose." Zorath nodded slowly. "Captain Cole, you and your people are welcome on Voron Prime. We will prepare a landing zone for your vessels." Cole smiled. It was a small expression, but it transformed his entire face. "Much appreciated, Commander. We'll see you on the ground." Cole out. The screen went dark. 2 hours later, the first human shuttle touched down at the main military base. Zorath stood at the landing pad with Mirith and Kira, watching as the metal doors opened and the legends walked out. There were about 20 of them. They wore dark armor that covered their bodies from neck to toe. They carried weapons unlike anything the Coalition used. And they moved with a strange confidence, looking around at the alien world with curious eyes. Captain Cole led the group. Walking beside him was a woman with short red hair and hard eyes. Behind them came a tall man with gentle features and a younger man carrying medical supplies. "Commander Zorath," Cole said, extending his hand. "Good to meet you in person." Zorath looked at the offered hand with confusion. Mirith whispered quickly, "It is a human greeting." "You grasp hands." He reached out and took Cole's hand. The human grip was firm and warm. There was strength in those soft-looking fingers, more than Zorath expected. "This is Sergeant Amy Parker," Cole said, nodding to the red-haired woman. "She leads our ground forces. Dr. Ben Hartley handles first contact to anything science-related. And Corporal Chris Reyes is our combat medic." Parker nodded sharply. Hartley offered a friendly wave. Reyes simply smiled. Mirith stepped forward. "Captain, may I ask a question that has haunted our people for centuries?" "Go ahead. Why did you truly leave?" "The stories say humans were powerful warriors who helped the Coalition win great victories. Why would such beings hide themselves away?" Hartley answered before Cole could speak. "Because we almost destroyed ourselves. Multiple times, actually. We created weapons that could end all life on our world. We used them against each other. Millions died." He paused, his voice heavy with old pain. "After the last Great War, our leaders decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist among other species. We might hurt them. We might make things worse. So we built walls around our sector and stayed behind them. But you could not stay hidden forever," Mirith said softly. Cole shook his head. "No, ma'am. We've been watching the galaxy through long-range sensors. We saw the Dravok rise. We saw them conquer world after world. We kept telling ourselves it wasn't our fight." His jaw tightened. "Then we heard Lieutenant Viss's message, and we realized we'd been lying to ourselves. It's always our fight. We just have to choose which side we're on." Kira stepped forward, her golden eyes shining. "You came because of me?" Parker laughed. It was a sharp, short sound. "Kid, We came because of everyone who ever screamed into the darkness and got no answer. You just happened to be the one we finally heard." Zorath studied the humans carefully. They looked so fragile. Their skin had no armor. Their bodies were small compared to his soldiers. Yet there was something in the way they carried themselves that made him uneasy. It was not fear exactly. It was the feeling you get when standing near a sleeping predator. "Captain Cole," he said finally, "what do you need from us?" Cole grinned, and this time there was something dangerous in it. "Just point us at your enemy, Commander. We'll handle the rest." Zora thought of the Dravok army, hundreds of thousands strong, advancing on their capital. He thought of the stories he had dismissed as fantasy, and he wondered if perhaps the legends had been too modest. "The Dravok will be here in 2 days," he said. "Can you stop them?" Cole turned to look at his soldiers. They were checking their weapons, stretching their muscles, and talking quietly among themselves. One of them was actually laughing at a joke. "Commander," Cole said, "stopping enemies is what we were born to do." Commander Zorath had seen many strange things in his years of military service. He had fought monsters from the deep void. He had walked on worlds where the sky was green and the rain fell upward. But nothing had prepared him for the humans. He stood in the mess hall of the Relentless, watching them eat. The food they consumed should have killed any normal species. They drank a hot black liquid called coffee that contained enough stimulants to stop a Varani heart. They ate fruits covered in a red sauce that burned like acid. One soldier was chewing on dried meat that smelled like it had been aged for decades. "Would you like to try some?" Dr. Hartley asked, offering a piece of the dried meat. Zorath took a cautious step back. "That is very kind, but I must decline." Hartley laughed gently. "Smart choice. Beef jerky is an acquired taste, even for us." In the corner of the room, a group of soldiers was fighting. They were not wearing armor, and they were throwing punches at each other with full force. Blood flew from a split lip. Bodies slammed in the walls. And they were laughing the entire time. "Should someone stop them?" Zorath asked, alarmed. Sergeant Parker looked up from her meal. "Stop them? That's just sparring. They're having fun." "Fun? They are hurting each other. That's how we train. Can't learn to take a hit unless someone hits you." She took a bite of something crunchy and continued talking with her mouth full. "Don't worry, Commander. They'll be best friends by dinner." Zorath shook his head in disbelief. These creatures were insane. How had they survived long enough to reach the stars? Later that day, he attended a strategy meeting in the main briefing room. Captain Cole stood at the head of the table, displaying holographic maps of Velran Prime. Around him sat a mix of human officers and coalition commanders, all trying to make sense of what was about to happen. "The Dravok have 60,000 ground troops approaching from the eastern valleys," Cole said. "Their fleet controls the orbital space. They expect to overwhelm your defenses and take the capital within 48 hours. Commander Zorath nodded grimly. "Those numbers are correct. We have perhaps 8,000 soldiers capable of fighting. Even with your people, we are badly outnumbered." "We're always outnumbered," Parker said. "That's normal." One of the coalition officers, a Thelian named Vark, spoke up. "Surely you understand the mathematics. This is not a battle we can win through courage alone." Cole smiled that dangerous smile again. "You're right. Courage alone won't do it. That's why we're going to cheat." He waved his hand, and the holographic display changed. Lines and arrows appeared, showing movement patterns that made no sense to Zorath. "Human tactical doctrine is based on one principle," Cole explained. "The enemy thinks they know how a battle works. We prove them wrong. We don't fight fair. We don't follow rules. We do whatever it takes to win." "That sounds like chaos," Vorik said. "It is chaos. But it's our chaos. We control it. The meeting continued for another hour, with Cole explaining human strategies and Parker describing ground tactics. The Coalition officers listened with a mixture of confusion and fascination. Nothing the humans said followed standard military thinking. That evening, an alarm shattered the peace of the base. A Dravok scouting party had attacked a small outpost on the eastern border. 50 Dravok soldiers against a handful of Coalition guards. The humans moved before anyone could give orders. 12 of them grabbed their weapons and ran for the transport ships. Zorath followed, determined to see these legends in action. They arrived at the outpost to find chaos. The buildings were burning. Coalition soldiers lay dead or wounded in the streets. The Dravok had formed a defensive line and were picking off survivors one by one. Parker jumped from the transport before it fully landed. Her team followed, spreading out with practiced efficiency. They did not wait for orders. They did not form careful lines. They simply attacked. The first grenade exploded in the center of the Dravok formation. Bright light and deafening sound disoriented the enemy. Before they could recover, the humans were among them. Zorath had never seen anything move so fast. Parker fired her weapon with one hand while drawing a blade with the other. She shot 2 Dravok in the chest, then slid beneath a third and cut his legs out from under him. Behind her, Corporal Reyes was doing the same thing, except he was already stopping to help a wounded Coalition soldier between kills. One human, a young man named Nate Torres, took a plasma bolt directly to the shoulder. The shot should have killed him. Instead, he stumbled, looked at the wound, and kept fighting. He tackled the Dravok who had shot him and beat the alien to death with his bare hands. Are they immortal? Kira whispered from beside Zorath. No, he replied slowly. Just impossible to stop. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, all 50 Dravok lay dead or dying. 3 humans were wounded, including Torres, but none were dead. They stood among the bodies, breathing hard, but already joking with each other. Nice tackle, Nick, one soldier called out. Torres grinned despite the blood running down his arm. Thanks. I've had worse falling off my bike. Reyes moved through the carnage with his medical kit, treating Coalition wounded with the same care he gave his fellow humans. There was no anger in his face, no battle rage. He simply helped everyone who needed it. Mirth had been right. The legends were not just stories of monsters. They were stories of creatures who contained both destruction and compassion in equal measure. Humans were violent beyond belief, but they protected the weak with that same violence. The Dravok commander in orbit received reports of the battle. He dismissed them as impossible. The humans were myths. The Coalition was simply lying to boost morale, thought he would learn the truth soon enough. And when he did, he would understand why the galaxy had been right to fear these creatures for 300 years, because the humans were not just coming. They were already here, and they were very, very angry. Commander Zorath stood at the window of his command center and watched the sky burn. Another transport ship fell through the clouds, trailing fire and smoke. That was the 3rd one today. The Dravok Dominion was getting closer, and there was nothing he could do to stop them. He was tired. His purple skin had grown pale over the past months, and the ridges on his forehead seemed deeper than before. War did that to a person. It took everything good and ground it into dust. Commander, a young voice called from behind him. We have received word from Coalition High Command. Zorath turned to face Lieutenant Kira Voss. She was young, barely 20 cycles old, with bright golden eyes that still held hope. He envied her for that. Hope was a luxury he could no longer afford. What did they say? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Kira looked down at her datapad. No reinforcements are available. All Coalition forces are engaged on other fronts. We are instructed to hold position and await further orders. Hold position. Those words meant nothing. They were alone on Velron Prime, facing an enemy that outnumbered them 10 to 1. The Coalition had abandoned them, and everyone in this room knew it. "Thank you, Lieutenant," Zorth said quietly. "You may return to your station." As Kira walked away, another figure approached. High Counselor Mirith was old even by Thelian standards. Her silver scales had faded to gray, and she moved slowly with the help of a walking staff. But her mind was still sharp, and she had seen more wars than anyone alive. "You look troubled, Commander," Mirith said. "We are going to die here," Zorth replied. There was no point in lying. "The Dravok will reach the capital within 5 days. We do not have enough soldiers to stop them." Mirith nodded slowly. "I remember a time long ago when the Coalition faced a similar darkness. My grandmother told me stories of those days." "Stories will not save us, Counselor." "Perhaps not," Mirith agreed. "But do you know what saved us back then?" "The Terrans." Zorth frowned. He had heard that word before, whispered in children's tales and old songs. "The humans? Those are myths, Counselor. Bedtime stories to frighten children. Are they?" Mirith smiled mysteriously. "My grandmother swore they were real. She said they came from a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy. They were strange creatures, soft and fragile, but impossible to kill. They laughed in the face of death and fought with a fury that terrified even the Dravok. If such beings existed, where are they now?" Mirith's smile faded. "They disappeared. 300 years ago, they sealed their sector and cut all contact with the galaxy. Some say they destroyed themselves. Others believe they are still out there, watching and waiting." Zorth shook his head. "Even if the legends were true, they cannot help us now. We must face reality, Counselor. We are alone." He walked away, leaving Mirith standing by the window with a thoughtful expression on her aged face in the communications room. Lieutenant Kira was running standard scans when something unusual appeared on her screen. It was a signal, old and weak, coming from the quarantine sector of space that everyone avoided. The sector where, according to legend, the humans lived. Her fingers moved across the controls as she tried to clean up the signal. It was a beacon, automated and ancient, repeating the same message over and over in a language her computer could barely translate. "Emergency frequency active. If you can hear this, respond. We are listening." Kira hesitated. Contact with the quarantine sector was forbidden. The Coalition had sealed those borders centuries ago and warned everyone to stay away. No one knew what was in there anymore. Some said it was empty. Others said it was full of monsters. But what did it matter now? They were going to die anyway. What was the worst that could happen? She took a deep breath and opened a channel. "This is Lieutenant Kira Voss of the Volrani Defense Force. We are under attack by the Dravok Dominion. Our colony is falling. If anyone can hear this message, we need help. Please." She sent the message and waited. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Nothing happened. Kira sighed and turned away from her console. It was foolish to hope. The legends were just that, legends. There were no magical warriors coming to save them. There was no one. And then her console beeped. She spun around and stared at the screen. A response was coming through. The signal was strong and clear, not like the ancient beacon at all. Someone had heard her. With shaking hands, Kira opened the channel. A voice came through the speakers. It was different from any voice she had ever heard. Deeper, rougher, but somehow warm at the same time. "This is Captain Danny Cole of the Earth Defense Fleet. We heard you. We're coming." Kira could not breathe. She could not think. The words echoed in her mind over and over again. Earth. That was the human homeworld. The place from the legends. The myths. "Captain Cole," she managed to say. "How soon can you arrive?" There was a pause, and then the voice returned with what almost sounded like amusement. "Faster than you believe. Just hold on, Lieutenant. Help is on the way." The channel went silent. Kira sat frozen in her chair for a long moment. Then she jumped to her feet and ran toward the command center. She had to tell Commander Zorath. She had to tell everyone. The legends were real. The humans were coming. When she burst through the doors, Zorath looked up with tired eyes. "Lieutenant, what is wrong?" Kira tried to catch her breath. Her hands were trembling, and she could feel tears forming in her eyes. But they were not tears of fear. For the first time in months, they were tears of hope. "Commander," she said. They answered. The humans answered. Zorath stared at her. Behind him, High Counselor Mirith began to laugh softly. It was a sound of pure joy, something none of them had heard in a very long time. "I told you," Mirith whispered. "I told you they were real." Outside the window, the sky still burned. The Dravok were still coming. But somehow, everything had changed. The myths were waking up, and they were bringing war with them. The fires had stopped burning. The guns had fallen silent. Valen Prime still stood, battered and scarred, but alive. Against all odds, against every prediction, they had won. Commander Zorath walked through the medical camp that had been set up near the capital. Coalition and human soldiers lay side by side, their wounds being treated by doctors from both species. The sight would have seemed impossible just days ago. Now it felt almost normal. He found Captain Cole sitting on an ammunition crate, staring at the horizon. The human looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and blood still stained his uniform. But there was peace in his expression, the peace of someone who had done what needed to be done. "Captain," Zorath said, sitting beside him, "I must ask you something." Cole nodded. "Go ahead. How do you do it?" "Your people fought like demons today. I saw humans take wounds that would have killed any Velrani, and they kept fighting. I saw them laugh in the face of death. And then, when the battle was over, I saw them weep for the fallen." Zorath shook his head. How can the same beings be so violent and so kind? Cole was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "Humans learned a hard lesson a long time ago. We have the capacity for terrible things. We can destroy. We can kill. We can burn entire worlds to ash." He paused. "But that capacity means nothing if we don't choose how to use it. Violence without purpose is just cruelty. Power without compassion is just tyranny. So you choose to protect. We try to. We fail sometimes. We're not perfect." Cole looked at Zorath with tired but honest eyes. "But we never stop trying. That's the best we can do." Dr. Hartley approached them, carrying 2 cups of something warm. He handed one to Cole and offered the other to Zorath. "It's tea. Much safer than coffee, I promise." Zorath accepted the cup cautiously. The liquid smelled sweet and earthy. He took a small sip and found it surprisingly pleasant. "Doctor," he said, "you told me that humans nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. How did you survive?" Hartley sat down on the ground, crossing his legs beneath him. "Each time we came close to the edge, we made a choice. We chose to step back. We chose to build instead of destroy." He smiled sadly. "It was never easy. Millions died because we learned too slowly. But we did learn, eventually." From across the camp, High Counselor Mirith approached with Lieutenant Kira and Sergeant Parker. Kira was walking with a slight limp, her leg bandaged, but her eyes were bright with joy. "Commander Zorath," Mirith said formally, "I have just spoken with Coalition High Command. They wish to extend an official invitation to humanity. They are asking the Terrans to rejoin the galactic community." Toll stood up slowly. "That's not my decision to make, Counselor. I command a single carrier group, Earth will need to vote on something this big. Then, bring the question to your people. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that the galaxy needs them." Parker snorted. "The galaxy was doing fine without us for 3 centuries. They only need us now because things got bad." "Yes," Mirith admitted. "That is true. But is that not when people truly show who they are? In times of peace, anyone can be good. It is in darkness that we discover our true nature." She looked at the human soldiers around the camp, some sleeping, some crying, some simply sitting in silence. "Your people showed their nature today, Sergeant. And it was magnificent." Parker looked away, but Zora saw something in her eyes that might have been embarrassment. Or perhaps pride. A ceremony was held that evening. Coalition soldiers and humans gathered in the central square of the capital, surrounded by damaged buildings and scarred streets. They stood together, shoulder to shoulder, as names were read aloud: human names and Volray names, Thelian names and names from a dozen other coalition species. All of them had fought. All of them had sacrificed. And some of them had died so that others could live. When the last name was spoken, Captain Cole stepped forward. He did not give a grand speech. He simply stood in silence for a moment, his head bowed, and then raised a hand in what Zorith now recognized as a human salute. Every human present copied the gesture. After a moment, Zorith and his soldiers did the same. Later, Kira found Sergeant Parker standing alone at the edge of the square. The human woman was staring at the stars, her expression unreadable. "Sergeant," Kira said quietly, "may I ask you something?" Parker glanced at her. "Sure, kid. Were you afraid?" "During the battle, I mean. When you charged into 60,000 enemies. Were you afraid?" Parker was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than Kira had ever heard it. "I was terrified. Every single second. But you fought. Anyway. That's what fear is for. It tells you something matters. If you're not afraid, you're not paying attention." Parker looked at Kira with something like respect. "You fought too, Lieutenant. You were afraid too. And you did it anyway." Kira felt tears forming in her eyes. "I had to. You came so far to help us. I could not let you fight alone." Parker smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine. "That's why we came, kid. Because nobody should have to fight alone." Across the galaxy, the Dravok Dominion received reports from their fleeing fleet. The Council listened in stunned silence as their commander described the battle. When he finished, the chamber erupted in chaos. "The humans were supposed to be extinct," one counselor shouted. "They were myths, stories." "The stories were wrong," another replied grimly. "And now we face a choice. Continue the war and face these creatures again. Or find another path." For the first time in a century, the Dravok began to discuss peace. On the bridge of the Relentless, Captain Cole stood alone, looking out at the stars. The ship was preparing to leave orbit, to return home and bring news of what had happened here. 300 years hiding, he said softly to himself. Maybe it's time we stop being ghosts. Behind him, the door opened. Dr. Hartley entered, carrying a datapad. "Danny, Coalition news networks are broadcasting across the galaxy. They're telling everyone what happened here." Cole nodded. "What are they saying?" "They're saying the humans are real. They're saying we fight beside them now." Hartley smiled. "They're saying the myths are alive." Cole looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were learning that humanity existed. Some would fear them. Some would hate them. But maybe, just maybe, some would hope. "Send a message to Earth," Cole said. "Tell them we're coming home. And tell them the universe is waiting." The Relentless turned toward the distant blue world where it all began. And across the galaxy, a new legend was being born, not of monsters who destroyed themselves, Not of ghosts who hid in the darkness, but of humans who chose, after 300 years of silence, to answer when someone called for help.